Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I firstly thank and congratulate the Honourable Lady from Enfield North for securing this debate. I have to say I hadn't realised it was quite so long since this place had had a debate like this on Turkey, which, when you consider what has been happening in the country over the past 5-10 years, is somewhat remarkable. And I think today does provide perhaps a long overdue opportunity for us to air some of the issues that are facing, particularly with the early elections coming up. And like many, I've watched with disappointment, as in recent years, President Erdogan's Turkey has slipped towards liberalism, hardline nationalism and authoritarianism. And I'm disappointed not just for Turkey, but for the wider region, and indeed, I think, more for global stability, because it is such a key country in terms of its placement, a neighbour to the Balkans, the Caucasus and the Middle East. It's a deeply important and influential country, and issues which arise in Turkey can frequently overspill out into its neighbours. And there is no question that an open, stable and democratic Turkey with a strong and mature civil society has the potential to be not only a strong ally, but also a beacon of liberal democracy to its many neighbours. And unfortunately, this trend towards illiberalism has accelerated since the failed coup attempt in 2016, which has been used by the Erdogan government as an opportunity to consolidate power and silence critics. Entire newspapers have been hijacked and eventually shut down altogether by the government. Journalists continue to be arrested and jailed at a rate not seen anywhere else in the world. Over 1,000 companies have had their assets seized, and thousands of judges, teachers and other officials have been fired or detained. Even Wikipedia has been blocked. Following this, Erdogan has pushed through constitutional changes, granting himself sweeping powers as president, with the changes approved in a referendum which has been blasted by the Council of Europe, the OSCE and the opposition. And this summer's snap elections, should they be won, will be the final piece in the puzzle entrenching President Erdogan in power beyond the Turkish Republic's centenary in 2023. And I think that it is really important to remember the symbolism of 2023, not just because of the centenary celebrations, but because it would also mark 20 years since he took office, and it would be the conclusion of his flagship 2023 vision, which was a set of economic and political goals for Turkey to have achieved by that year. And worryingly, the response to the economic crisis, which has completely derailed any progress of Turkey towards meeting those vision goals, has been for President Erdogan to just spread conspiracy theories and anti-Semitic rhetoric. And Erdogan is absolutely no stranger to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He's blamed Israel for the overthrow of President Morsi in Egypt, called the protesters spawn of Israel, and complained that the Turks are accused of being Jews, Armenians or Greeks. And more recently, Erdogan has sought to blame virtually all setbacks or criticisms on what he calls the mastermind, who are apparently behind the 2016 coup, the Gulen movement, ISIS, the PKK and Turkey's ongoing financial crisis, all a part of some attempt to overthrow him and destroy Turkey. Now, whilst he's generally vague as to who the mastermind is or are, there's clearly strong anti-Semitic currents running through this ultra-nationalist conspiracy theory. During the election campaign, Erdogan has blamed the devaluation of the lira on some Jewish families, for example. And I think this is a hugely regrettable turn in what had been, in the past, one of the most open and tolerant countries in the region. The undoing of this work in recent years has been tragic and cannot bode well for the future of Turkey or of its neighbours, and it does, I think, as the Honourable Lady suggests, actually potentially pose a threat. Erdogan has allied with an ultra-nationalist party to force through his constitutional reforms, and now for these snap elections arrested most of the leaders of the main pro-Kurdish party and overseen the collapse of the solution process with the PKK. In 2013, it emerged that Erdogan's government was secretly coding people of Greek, Armenian and Jewish ancestry in population registers. And just months ago, he fuelled nationalist paranoia even further by making this genealogy database publicly available, which perhaps unsurprisingly has led to some quite vile attacks, both online, in the media and indeed on individual people in the street. That service allows Turks to find out whether their ancestors were, for example, Greeks or Armenians who passed themselves off as Muslim Turks 100 years ago to save their own lives and homes. So this nationalism is resurgent, conspiracy theories are widespread, and the government is fuelling anti-Semitic tropes. I hope, but I don't expect, that despite the pattern of recent years, Turkey can change course once again. I hope, but I don't expect, despite the best efforts of my honourable friend, that the elections will be free and fair, but I suspect that if anyone can manage it, she probably can. I certainly wouldn't want to mess with her. Given its location, a strong, liberal and democratic Turkey could be a great force for good in the world, standing for stability and human rights and against terrorism in all its forms. So I do hope and I do expect that the UK government will maintain its commitment to strong relations with Turkey, an absolutely key NATO ally and trading partner, but not being afraid to make criticisms where they are merited. And I do think that the Honourable Lady does have a point that actually the UK government's response hasn't been strong enough to some of the things that have been going on. And I do think a little bit stronger language would have been possible and would have been merited. Because our commitment to promoting human rights and liberal democracy worldwide has to be absolute, not just in Turkey, but right around the world.
Yeah.